Welcome, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the Power to Fly Chat and Learn. My name is Hunter. My pronouns are he, they, and I am so glad you're here. You'll probably get a cameo from my dog who is on my lap. This is Francis asking all of the questions. Okay, friends. So thank you for being here. We're going to jump right in. A little bit of housekeeping first. You can participate by turning on your cameras and using the chat. And if you turn on your camera, it's a great way for our speakers and our panel. We have not one, not two, but three panelists today. So it's a great way to connect with them if you have your camera on and making name, the face. Spoiler, they're hiring. So this is a great way for you to connect with them. This is being recorded. So we'll send you an email link in the coming days. You can write in the chat, in the group chat at any time to ask questions to our speakers today, and we will pepper those in. Also, if you want to ask a question privately, you can go over to the chat section, click my name, Hunter, and then you can DM me so I can ask something anonymously on your behalf if you like. Or if there's any concerns that come up, you can ping me that way, and I'll do my best to address it. I also have awesome support here from Paloma, at Power to Fly here, who is also helping address anything. And you can keep up with us on social media at Power to Fly. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have so many great things there, awesome other chats and resources. So check that out, friends. Okay, Zapier is our company today. Here is their landing page on the Power to Fly website. Look how fun it looks. Look at all these cool things happening. They're out and about. There's events happening. That enormous team looks so happy. Everyone looks so happy in all these pictures. I love it. These are happy people. I have to say, we did a prep call and it was just like smiles and grins the whole time. So I'm super stoked. Look, they're giggling. We're having a great time. Okay, so this is the page where you can see more info about them. If you go to thepowertofly.com/jobs and you go to Zapier, look at this, job listings, benefits, events. There's other videos, resources. It's a great way to check out what's going on in further detail. So first up, so we have three speakers. So we're going to start with Jocelyne here, is the head of total rewards at Zapier with almost 20 years of HR experience, over 10 specifically with compensation and benefits. She joined Zapier almost 3 years ago as the first total rewards employee to design and scale the total rewards experience. She's worked across different industries from small to enterprise companies, focusing on building scalable programs that are designed with empathy and focus on attracting and engaging teams to enable a company's growth and success. Awesome. Marcos is a people-focused professional. Yes, I love some alliteration, that believes individuals do their best work when they feel seen, valued, and heard for who they are. Yes. As a DIBE, Diversity, Inclusion, Belonging, and Equity Program Manager at Zapier, Marcos is committed to building measurable systemic solutions so that every Zapian has the resources they need to succeed and to feel like they belong. So beautiful and wonderful. And we're going to jump into the details of that soon. Randy is an experienced technical talent sourcer with a demonstrated career in executive research and in-house recruiting. A first-generation college graduate and leader of Zapier's BIPOC ERG, he is a champion for building out diversity and inclusion practices in the recruiting field. So please give a digital round of applause to our three speakers today. Hi, friends. How are y'all doing? Let's start with Marcos. What's up, friend?
Doing great. We are a happy group of people. Anytime I get to spend with Randy and Jocelyne, I'm thrilled. So happy to be here. Welcome to everybody. I'm coming to you from my home here in Austin, Texas. Can't wait for our conversation today.
Yeehaw, Marcos. Okay, Jocelyne.
Hi, Jocelyne Wright-McLemore, and similar to Marcos, anytime I get to spend with Marcos and Randy is a good time to me. I'm based out of San Diego, California, and I'm just going to put it out there. I woke up sort of sick today, so y'all might hear my voice go in and out. So I've got my hot tea, so we're just going to keep our fingers crossed that my voice lasts for the next hour.
Excellent. And in this chat, we're going to be spilling the tea for the next hour as well, but not on your desk, okay? Be careful. Randy, what's up?
Hey everyone, I'm Randy Alvarenga. I am originally from Washington, D.C., but living now in the Pacific Northwest and Seattle area. I am so excited to be here and to have the opportunity to speak with all of you and to share the stage with some really awesome people that I respect and really look up to. So I'm glad I'm here with Marcos and Jocelyne as well.
It's so great. I just suddenly had like Elton John's "Can You Feel the Love" tonight going through me. I feel the love in this meeting between you tonight, this morning, this afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. I'm feeling it. So Marcos, can you kick us off? So this is a great, huge topic. So we are talking about building an inclusive workspace from concept to action. So let's start with the concept. Let's take the big zoom out, right, before we jump in. So can you kind of set the stage up for us, Marcos, of what is inclusion and why is it important at Zapier?
Yeah, love the question. And today you'll hear us talk about different DIBE concepts. And of course, DIBE stands for diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. So I'll ground us first in these concepts and then talk about why inclusion is important here at Zapier. So when we think about diversity, it's simply difference. Each of us has identities of our own that are unique to who we are, and that makes difference in the world and in our workplace. Belonging is when folks feel seen, valued, and heard for those differences that they bring, and they feel that they're a part of something bigger because of those things. Equity is really when all parties are provided with the resources they need to succeed. So my identities might look different than the person next to me, the person on my right or left, but I'm given the resources I need to succeed, as are they. And then there's inclusion, which we're going to talk a lot about today, which is essentially the environment that encompasses all of these. An environment where diversity can really thrive, and all parties feel respected and are held accountable for uplifting and upholding this inclusive environment. And they know how to be activated and how to do so. So why it's important to us here at Zapier. Our mission is to make automation work for everyone. And the key word in this phrase is everyone. We have customers from all over the globe. We have team members from all around the globe who are building products to meet the diverse needs of our customers. So to reach our mission, we understand that Zapians must feel that we belong in our workplaces, that we're respected and held accountable. And if we are able to do that, we can build better products, we can create more innovative solutions, and we can best serve our existing and future global customers. And when we talk today, you're going to hear us likely talk about DIBE as DNA. It's the heart of what we do here on our people team. It's how we consider DIBE implications through every stage of what we build and what we launch. It's how we design our practices in a way that folks feel they can access and understand. It's around how we drive accountability and transparency in our work. And DIBE as DNA is also how we collectively account for different perspectives to improve what we build and what we produce on our teams. So you'll hear us talk about DIBE as DNA, and you'll hear us talk about each of these DIBE concepts today.
I love that, Marcos. And I love too, because we do, I think at Power to Fly and many other places, it's like DEI and B, and you switch it up a little bit. And I love DIBE. It's just like, it just feels good. It's like a nice warm cup of tea. I love it. I love it. Okay, friends. So the way the next 50 minutes work is we have a bunch of pre-submitted questions written by y'all. Thank you so much for those. They've been anonymized, so I don't know who wrote them. So if you hear your question, give a little shout out if you want. And if you have other questions, drop it in the chat and we'll pepper them in. So keep them coming so we can like have them at the ready, and we will definitely get to those as you add them. So thank you for your participation. So let's jump in. Definitely gave us a beautiful picture there of what we're talking about. So we can start getting into some of the action now. So Randy, if I'm going to pitch it over to you. So what can we do as individuals to support in an inclusive workspace?
Yeah, I think this is really important because there are some actions that we all can take, no matter who we are and where we come from. The first of which I think is educating yourself about DIBE and what it is in the first place. So learning about the space, how you can get involved, and taking some examples from other people who have already come into that space. So I think to some of the resources that I've used or that people have sort of shared with me. So things like I like to read the Harvard Business Review website and their diversity page, specifically diversity and inclusion. That can be really great. Things like the guide to allyship to learn how to be a better ally, if that's where you're coming from in your journey with DIBE. Some really awesome books and podcasts. I'm a big listener to that. And essentially some podcasts that come to mind are like NPR's like Code Switch and The Diversity Gap, for example. Are ones that I really enjoy. Now, once you've done that sort of piece of learning a bit about what DIBE is, right, you can then start reflecting inward and trying to really identify like where are your own biases, because we all have biases. Whether or not you're ready to admit that or not is part of the journey that you go on when you learn about DIBE. And then moving into getting involved. So once you've sort of identified some of your biases, where you have privilege in your life, you can start like really separating yourself from just how you feel. Because I know it can be really hard for myself sometimes to admit that, oh, wait, I have privilege. I have all these other situations in my life where it's difficult for me. But now as I move forward as a person in the DIBE space, I need to remember that I also can open the doors for others. And I have that opportunity. And so getting involved, joining organizations in your company, or if they're not there, learning how to sort of start some of those companies or gather groups of people who want to do that. And then the final thing is allyship. I'd actually like to share a little bit about why allyship is really important to me specifically. And that's because it really affected me, right? I did not work in tech before moving back to the US. I spent about 8, almost 9 years abroad in Japan. And so when I came back to the US, I was very clear that I wanted to try moving into recruiting because I had done some work in that in college, but had no way of getting my foot in the door, and no place wanted to take a shot on me, right? I have this background in theater. No one was quite sure what they wanted to do. And then I had a conversation with a friend of a friend, and we started really talking about recruiting and why I wanted to go there. And he just was really receptive and listened. And he said, I understand what you're talking about. Let me get your resume in front of the right person. And in that situation, he was a massive ally. And that was the first step I needed to have someone take me seriously, to bring me into the room, right? And what I need to do as a person moving forward is also do that for others. Where can I speak up for someone in a meeting when they're not being heard? Those are the pieces of this journey that I'm still working on, but that I think are really valuable as we move into DIBE. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Randy. There's so many amazing resources in there that you highlighted there in the beginning of how to educate ourselves, with the guide to allyship you recommended. There was the Harvard webpage, the Hello Little One, yes, NPR Code Switch, Diversity Gap. I told you, he's a little camera hog. He wants to be here. Representing the puppies in the room. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing about the how someone lend you a hand, with getting your name in front of the right person, your resume. And I know a theater kid when I see one. Hey, friend. So I'd love to share that too. And speaking of NPR, Jocelyne, if you want to give us your best, like, quiet NPR voice in your answers to protect your voice, that's totally fine. So I'm going to pitch it over to you next. So if you, so we have a great question here. Being an all remote organization, Zapier, What programs has Zapier launched to create an environment where people feel included and engaged? Now, I love this question because in this time of Zoom and Google Meetup and all this stuff, and we're working remotely from all these things, y'all seem to be very connected. So, you're like, oh, I love spending time with each other. And like a lot of this might be digital. So I'd love to hear about what some of these things are of how y'all create this connection and inclusion with each other.
Yeah. By the way, I love NPR. I'm going to try and do my best NPR voice throughout this. We'll see how it goes. There's a couple of different things that Zapier has done intentionally in order to create that. And I think one of the longest standing practices that we've had is an annual all company retreat. So imagine when the company first started out and there were 10 people flying from wherever they were to one location and spending a week together. 11 years ago, 12 years ago, fast forward that to today in February, this past February, we had over 600 people flying from all over the country into one location, Austin, Texas, in one hotel. And we had 4 or 5 days just to spend time connecting with each other, building those relationships outside of the virtual space. And I think those moments are really important because you build those interpersonal relationships, you understand someone's mannerisms, their way of speaking, how they emote. And so then when you're working with that person in a digital environment, you can take those interactions and translate them in. And I think that creates a space, it breaks down some walls, it creates more vulnerability when you've created those in-person moments. And to that end, we also provide every Zapian with a monthly meetup budget. And so everybody gets a set of amount of money every single month to either have a virtual or in-person meetup. And so, for example, like my team, we meet up at least once a month to get together. We do games. We've actually had someone on my team do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And so we create these interactions that are not work focused, and they are focused on getting to know each other and just building relationships. And then we have, which is really interesting to me, this is the first company I've seen that has continued the practice for a long time. We have weekly company-wide hangouts. So this is one time every single week, the entire company can jump on a Zoom, and we cover a bunch of different topics from different teams. So it's really great to see different teams being highlighted, the different type of work that they're doing, the way in which they're thinking about the work that they're doing, including our ERG leaders. So a couple of weeks ago, our ERG leaders had the spotlight in talking about the work they do, their mission, and their strategy to create a more inclusive environment for our communities at Zapier. And the thing I love about these weekly company-wide hangouts, I think when I first started Zapier, I attended my first hangout. I was so focused on the chat because there was so much activity and interaction going on and people making jokes. And I love that aspect of it. I also found out that I might be dated because someone asked what's potpourri in one of the chats. And I thought, wow, they're people who don't know what potpourri is. So I was like, whoa, totally dated. But there's like those sorts of interactions that are going on. There's conversations about who's a villain in Encanto. And so I think there's a lot of that interaction that happens in our digital space that we've created. And one last thing that I will say, and this is pretty specific to Zapier, is that our onboarding team does a really great job of helping folks get assimilated into Zapier culture very quickly. And that is really crucial to starting you off on the right foot, is having that support so you feel like you're embedded, you feel coming in day one that you're a part of the team. And Zapier as a whole, if I had to sum it up in one word, it's empathy. This is probably the nicest company I've ever worked at, where everybody is so nice. And I think that also helps create a space of inclusion as well. So those are some of the things specifically that Zapier has done. And then the last thing, can't forget it, our ERGs. I mean, Randy is one of our ERG leaders in 2023, and the work that they do to create, social connections within specific groups, but also between those groups in the community is really, really crucial to creating a sense of DIBE across Zapier.
Oh, I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that from the retreats, to the monthly meetups, to the active chat, to the onboarding process, the supportive, empathetic onboarding process, and the ERGs that we'll jump into as well. That's so fantastic to hear the plethora of resources that are available, and that clearly help, because y'all seem real happy, as we've highlighted. So, it clearly is working, and all that sounds super fun and super great. And also, like you were saying too, Jocelyne, of like, oh, this is these chats and these meetups, we can learn from each other, like from potpourri to Encanto to, cultural differences, and like what these things are. And, oh, my experience of walking through the world is wildly different than that person's. Oh, I never thought about how much privilege I have just by walking into a room, or lack thereof, depending on the circumstances. These are the opportunities that are available at Zapier, and it's really encouraging to hear that y'all are putting in the work in that way. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, friends, I'm starting to get some questions, which is awesome. Keep them coming. Love it. You can DM me, you can write it in the public chat. Use the public chat. Please be mindful that this is a shared, empathetic space, and we want to make sure that our language is inclusive and welcoming for everyone reading it and taking it in, so that we all have a great time. Okay, Marcos, talk to me about how inclusion is measured at Zapier. Is it like a pie chart? Is it like a Google Doc? Is it one-on-ones? What's happening?
Well, I really like this question. Whoever asked it, bravo, because a DIBE strategy is only as good as the results of it and the accountability that's there. So great question. Here at Zapier, we really look at 3 pillars that help focus our efforts here at Zapier. So first is systems. We think about what is the problem we're trying to solve, and how can we best design a solution to create a systemic solution. Second pillar is around practices. This is when we start thinking about what are the programs, the rituals, the actions, the resources that are needed to help us solve this problem. And then we think third about people. So who is impacted, and how are they impacted? And how are we going to create something that can meet a specific group of folks who may be experiencing something here at Zapier? One way that inclusion is measured at Zapier is through our inclusion index. This is made up of 5 different survey questions that are part of our larger DIBE survey that we've traditionally sent out annually. And this is built through Culture Amps research on key factors that are actionable and that have a high impact on sense of inclusion. So these series of questions are aimed at understanding things like feeling respected in the workplace, feeling safe to take risks, feeling valued here at Zapier. The results of these produce a score that allows us to benchmark our progress year over year and compare our scores to other companies who are doing this work. Measuring inclusion gives us insight then on how the DIBE team can prioritize our work, activate others, and build net new resources or refresh resources that align with our DIBE strategy to ensure that we are impacting team members in a way where they feel, again, like they are seen, valued, heard, and held accountable for creating this inclusive workspace.
I love that. Thank you, Marcos. So Marcos, can we dig a little deeper on this for a sec? Can you tell me a bit about your personal experience with some of this? How has those, so if I'm remembering correctly, you said people, ritual, structures, was that the 3 categories? Is that right?
Systems, practices, and people. Yep.
Systems, thank you. So what does that look like for you, Marcos? Like having that available and being a part of it. It sounds, you're very active, but what has it been like for you to be, putting in that data, and what do you get back?
Yeah, great question. So we have a mighty team of 2 here at Zapier, but we have an extensive group of folks who we activate to help us in this work. We have a wonderful learning and development team. We have a wonderful people team in general that helps us think through how to best measure what we're working on and how to activate others to do so. And so when we get this information back, we look at our strategy, we look at what's working, what's not working. We share this with the company to be default to transparency, which is one of our values. And we look at how are we prioritizing our work and what does this mean for our strategy moving forward. For me to be at a company like Zapier, who not only wants this data, but wants to share it, we want to be, we default to transparency and really looking at being real and just saying, hey, we built this program and this is how it's working, or these are the things that we want to improve, and this is what we've heard from you. And so we build our strategy. It is adaptable, and it's focused on what we think is going to best impact our teammates here at Zapier. And we use this data to help us do that.
That's awesome. I love too the mighty team too. That's got a nice ring to it. With my tiny dog, I always say he's small but mighty. So I agree. There's a lot two people can do. It's incredible. Can you share some advice on how to identify our own biases, right? Like this is where the intention comes in of doing the work, like you mentioned earlier, educating ourselves. So how can we address our own biases to help create a more inclusive space?
Well, I think the first step is exactly what you said, which is educating yourself, right? Like,
well, you said it. I was just mirroring it back.
But also like creating the opportunity, I think, for other people to learn about themselves too. So
yeah,
for example, one of those is we have resources for hiring managers, for example, that talk on like bias in hiring and how they can overcome some of that. So creating resources so that people in all the different steps of the company are learning about that about themselves, right? And then some other steps are learning to challenge your own assumptions. We all come from backgrounds where we have different things that we assume, and learning to like question why you think that and where your faults are. And then like learning to like be open and receptive to new ideas and thoughts, I think is really important. And then being open to feedback, right? I think it's really easy for myself to be like, hey, I'm changing and I've acknowledged this piece of myself, but like asking other people, what do you think about how I'm approaching this situation? Do you think I'm being welcoming to everyone in these meetings that I'm running? Can I do more? What feedback do you have? One of the things here at Zapier that we have is being like growth through feedback, and being really open to accepting that feedback throughout the process, wherever you are, I think is one of the things that makes Zapier, as Jocelyne said, very empathetic, because empathy can be really nice sometimes, but it also can be really difficult, right? Like there are times where being empathetic means telling someone that, hey, I don't think the way you approached this in that meeting was really inclusive. How can we solve that? Let's work together. Right. And opening and calling in instead of calling out someone for their actions, I think is really powerful there.
Calling in instead of calling out. Yes, Randy. Wow, I need to put that on a Post-it right there. That is solid. Okay, so friends, we just passed the half-hour mark. So you have 28 minutes. It's going to be 27 in a second to ask more questions. So get them in, keep that chat alive. We have such a warm, brilliant panel here. So get your questions in. If you all ask them all in the last 5 minutes, I'm not going to get to answer all of them, or they're not going to get to answer all of them. So drop them in the chat, use the time. If not now, when, my friends? Okay, so next up, we thank you, Randy, for really jumping in on that. I really appreciate you. Okay, next we're going to lob it over to Marcos. What are, let's see, here we go. Zapier's, what are Zapier's employee resource groups, ERGs, and how do you drive ERG visibility and engagement? So important, right?
Yeah, great question. I love our ERG program here at Zapier. I have the fortune of being able to work with these folks on a weekly basis. We have Randy, who is the vice chair of our BIPOC employee resource group. And then Jocelyne is our newly minted executive sponsor for that BIPOC ERG as well. So excited. We've got two awesome folks here who can talk about this work as well. We have 3 employee resource groups here at Zapier. We have PRISM, which supports our LGBTQIA+ team members. We have Women of Zapier, and we have BIPOC. These are all open to allies and aspiring allies as well. And here at Zapier, they have a true business impact. So our ERGs aren't just feel-good social clubs, though I always feel good and love socializing with them, but they're more. We look at our ERG work as work. It's tied directly into our company strategy and mission. ERGs provide a space for folks to build community. Jocelyne's talked a little bit about that. It provides career development opportunities for underrepresented groups to grow and apply their skills to their functional roles. And ERGs can shed light on issues that are likely impacting our global customers and can help solve or have dialogue around how we can best support those groups. Our ERG leaders are really what makes our ERGs run. Here at Zapier, these are volunteers who are indeed leaders, and they're equipped to be leaders. They're resourced with professional development. Their strategies are tied directly to our DIBE strategy. And I'm really proud to say that here at Zapier, our chairs and vice chairs are compensated for their work because this work is hard work, it's emotional labor, and that is something we've implemented in 2023 with tremendous support from our Chief People Officer and our people team. We have executive sponsors, we have a budget. I could go on and on about our ERGs, but I want to get to the question around visibility and engagement. So to make ERGs successful, they have to be visible. This included, so far this year, we've invited our ERG leaders to Leadership Day at our all-company retreat that Jocelyne talked about. We had an ERG session at our weekly company all-hands meeting. Their functional managers go through an ERG onboarding so they understand the roles and responsibilities of our ERG leaders. We have events, we have professional folks that come in and run panels for us. There's a lot of different ways that we give visibility to our ERGs. And then engagement-wise, people can engage with them in different ways. You can simply just join our Slack channels. You can become a committee member. You can become an ERG leader. You can attend any and all events. And we encourage folks to block time on their calendars to do so. So we have a variety of ways for folks to be able to engage at a level that's comfortable for them. Like I said, it's one of my favorite parts of working here at Zapier. They are resourced. We have committed leaders, and we have tremendous support from our executive team to ensure they're a part of our strategy of ensuring folks have a place to go to feel like they belong and they can learn and support one another.
Love that. So many amazing resources. So fantastic. Thank you for that, Marcos. Okay, friends. Yes, some questions are coming in. Thank you. I love it. I love it. We're going to answer them. Okay, Jocelyne, can you speak to me about what does it mean to be an inclusive leader at Zapier? And follow-up question, what is a group of Zapiers called? Zappies? Zappians? What do you...
So there's a lot of debate about the terminology Zappians. Some say Zapparonis. There's like a number of different terms. So I think we first have to agree on like what's the actual name for a member of the Zapier team, and then we can figure out what is a multiple. What's the word for a multiple?
I mean, I'm voting for Zapparoni. That is,
I do love pepperoni,
I don't work there.
So
Yeah, exactly.
So I think what it means to be an inclusive leader at Zapier is Randy talked about biases. And I think, first of all, that means minimizing your own biases by surrounding yourselves with others who think, who live differently than you. And this happens through hiring, this happens through thought leadership, and it happens in engaging with groups across Zapier. I think if you, there's this psychology term groupthink, and I think if you surround yourself with people who think the same, look the same, act the same, you tend to come out with the same results. And so for someone like myself and my team that is producing highly emotional, highly impactful programs for the entire company, we within ourselves need to be diverse so that we can, be able to look at those offerings in a way that is representative of our teams. I think it's also listening to all voices, not just the largest population or the loudest voices. I think sometimes, especially for underrepresented groups, they tend to be a smaller part of the population or have quieter voices. So oftentimes companies might say, well, we're focusing on the largest population because we can impact the most people, or they're paying attention to the squeaky wheel, as they say. And that ends up, disproportionately sometimes funneling resources, programs, et cetera, to folks who may need support, but because we're not intentionally looking at them, they might be left out of that impact. I think a good example of this is last year we implemented care at fertility. And this was in part due to requests from our PRISM team. So our PRISM ERG, they brought this up as a lack in the offerings that we had. And, to Marcos's point about, do you have the resources and the access to do the things that you want to do? This wasn't a highly important offering for us to have, because they want a family too, right? And so we want to make sure that for those who want to have a family, that you have a pathway to that and that we can support you in that. And so that's, one of the programs that it wasn't the largest population. It also wasn't the loudest population, but it was a population that we want to focus on to make sure they had an equal experience there. And then I think the last thing, so these are like good meeting practices, but they are also grounded in creating inclusivity. So providing pre-reads for those ahead of time before meetings. So for folks who need more time to digest, who might have might be neurodiverse and need more time in different ways to intake the information and think it through, I think it's like a really great idea. Leaving space in meetings for others to provide feedback. I've noticed sometimes that they'll say, does anyone have any questions? And there'll be like a 2-second pause and then they'll move on. Like, oh wait, I needed time to think through and I wanted feedback. So while it's really uncomfortable to sit in silence for like a minute, it gives people the time and space that if they want to speak, they can and provide that feedback. And that's how you're hearing the quieter voices in the room. And so those are some of the ways I feel it's important to, be an inclusive leader here at Zapier.
I love that. There's so much in there. And I also love that exercise of the minute of silence or just waiting for people to speak. So if they want to, because we all process things in different ways, right? And for me, I'm like sensory overload, taking everything in a mile a minute. And sometimes like, oh, I needed to sit for 25 seconds to remember that thing that Marco said 20 minutes ago that I have a question about, instead of the last thing that just happened, which is what I did with your comment right now. Calling myself out. But, it's so important. It's so important. And it's so great to hear that those are just, you're talking about some big ways and some little ways of how that shows up. So I love that. And Marcos, I want to thank you for answering questions in the chat right now, because there's some great questions coming in and you're doing that. So thank you for doing that. So we have, less than 20 minutes left, friends. So keep them coming. This is great. Okay, Seer, next up, let's go over to my theater pal, Randy. And what inclusive strategies does Zapier implement when it comes to the hiring process, which we were alluding to a little bit earlier?
Yeah, sorry. So there's a lot. So one is through creating partnerships with different organizations that think about that DIBE in a lot of ways in their work. For example, Power to Fly, other organizations like Alpha, Tech Ladies, and we're always looking to expand that list, right? We just signed on Latinas in Tech, for example. We're also looking at other organizations to partner with in the future. So if you're one of those orgs, reach out to us and let's work together. But the other thing beyond that is being really intentional with our recruiting and sourcing, that we're bringing people from diverse backgrounds into the process who may not be there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be really hard to step into an interview when no one looks like you, right? And no one's there who shares that identity. And I know it can be really hard when you join those teams and you're like, hey, I'm the only person like me. If a hiring manager reached out to me and was like, hey, we're looking to bring people onto the team because we don't have this. And we really want to value what you uniquely bring to the team. I feel a lot more, I feel a lot better. And then having resources like ERGs and other programs that Zapier does for DIBE would make me feel a lot more confident to make that decision, right? Because every company has to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's learning how we can support people through that process. That's the important piece of it.
So good. Thank you. Okay, friends. We're gonna move on down the road. Let's see. So let's go over to Marcos. How can we ensure that DIBE efforts are deeply embedded in the culture and values of the company? Great question.
Yeah, I really love this question. I would say first and foremost, the strategy must tie to the company mission. So making the business case clear as to why DIBE matters and how it benefits the company. That's probably first and foremost. And then the strategy itself, ensuring that one, it's measurable. We talked a little bit about that, ensuring that you have deliverables that are driven by data and informed by data. Secondly, that you're activating stakeholders in your strategy. So everyone feels ownership of, all right, I know what the strategy is, and I know how I can be activated to ensure that I'm doing my part to build an inclusive workforce. That includes executive buy-in. That includes looking at other team members across your people team who are building programs that impact all Zapians or all people in your company. Third, I would say building a culture of allyship. So Randy touched on this. This is a way to really get DIBE embedded in your culture and your values. When people feel comfortable looking out for one another, recognizing their advantage identities and how they can use their social capital and cultural capital to help the person next to them who may have identities different than theirs. Fourth, being transparent. So I've talked about our default to transparency value here at Zapier. If you can be transparent with your strategy, people can understand how they fit into it. They can refer to it often. They can see reporting and the internal work that you're doing to ensure that you're reaching your strategy. And then lastly, I would say it's about being realistic and being real. So we have something on our team that we like to say, which is progress over perfection. My director, Maggie, says this to me often, and it's something that is so important in the DIBE space. This work, the DIBE field's evolving every single day. And so we have to progress with it. We're never going to be perfect, but as long as we're making progress, we're doing our part. We also cannot solve all the world's issues. So our strategy helps drive what we can do and what we can't do. And I think that's important when you're thinking about how to ingrain DIBE into your culture and your values, is being very real about what we can accomplish here in our workplace. And then lastly, celebrate the wins when you can and check in on each other. This is hard work. It's rewarding work. It's a lot of emotional labor, but there's a lot of joy that comes into this work. So when you can deeply embed it into the culture, people can celebrate these wins together, can talk about areas of improvement in a comfortable way, and consistently check in on each other to ensure that we're each doing our part to build an inclusive workplace.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, friends, we have just about 10 minutes left. So Jocelyne, as a senior leader at Zapier, how do you build inclusion on your team?
So I practice some of the things that I mentioned earlier about being an inclusive leader, but some intentional additional ways that I do this is by leading with vulnerability. As a leader, you feel like you should be showing up as the best version of yourself or presenting the best version of yourself. And I found that the more vulnerable and open and transparent I am, that is what I get back from my team. So if my team is having a rough day, if my team is like, I'm sorry, I need to gripe for a minute about this, I can let them listen and like, okay, but it sounds like you have a little bit of bias in this situation, so let's talk about it. But we're able to have those conversations, and I think that is in due part to I'm not showing up as perfection, and that also means that they don't feel like they have to show up as perfection. And the other way that I do this is through hiring. I've been very intentional in how I built my team, both in terms of background, in terms of experience, in terms of location. So I opened up a couple of roles last year, and I was very intentional. I said, for 2 of my roles, they cannot be in North America. They need to be in a completely different time zone. I want that diversity of thought and experience, lived experience. And while I have a lot of global experience myself, I've also lived outside of the country for a lot of my formative years. I've become removed from that. And so I want folks who are living that lived experience now and can provide me insight and can challenge me when you're like, well, you think you're thinking this way, but this is how it would show up for me if I were in that situation. Another example is intentionally soliciting feedback and opinions from my team. And also encouraging them to do that as well, especially when it comes to areas that they may not have expertise in. So a good example is, if someone on my benefits team is implementing accommodations process, we might go talk to the comp team, because while the comp team doesn't have experience in accommodations, they might see some holes because they're not as closely tied to the work, or they may say, how might that resonate with others? And we also have been, with Marcos's help, it's been really amazing having Marcos here, is that we're starting to engage with our ERG leaders to get their feedback and input on programs that we're designing to make sure that, we're not negatively impacting our URGs as a result of the programs that we're doing. And then lastly, and Marcos referenced this earlier, DIBE as DNA. So what does that mean? That means that you're taking these principles of diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity and building them into your program design. So for example, if we're looking at a program, what's the accessibility level for all of the folks across all of the 40 plus countries that we have? Do they have a similar experience? What barriers do they need to overcome if we implement this? Does it have language barriers for them? And so these types of principles allow us to ensure that we're building for inclusivity and that folks aren't feeling left out by good intentions. So those are some of the ways that I, as a specific leader, build inclusion into my team and my programs for that matter.
Amazing. That is so inspiring. There's so much in there. That is incredible. Okay, friends, we only have a few minutes left. We have all these amazing questions. We're not going to get to all of them. I'm sorry. My people pleasing wants to be able to answer all of you, and I can't. I'm sorry. But we do have some great questions that we are making. Oh, emotional support dog. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. He knows it's real. So we're going to go around the circle a little bit. So I want to hear from all 3 of you on this. How does Zapier support its employees, and what makes it truly different and stand out from other companies? So let's start with Randy.
Yeah, I would start with the fact that Zapier is really intentional in how they do remote work. That's very different from any other company I've ever been at. What I mean by that is when they say like your schedule is flexible, it really is. Just personal thing, I had some health stuff a few years back, and I needed to be able to take part of my morning to do some physical exercise, right, to help me recover. When I was interviewing for Zapier, and I would made it very clear, this is really important to me because it's my health, it's my life, and it was really negatively affected in my last role. So I'm not joining a company that doesn't take that into consideration, right? And Zapier was like, no hesitation. Oh yeah, that's fine. Like, we are about allowing people to live their lives. I've heard of people who have children being able to work part of their morning, take care of their children and send them off to school, come back to work, pick them up later in the day, and then work in the evenings, right? The same type of thing. Like, that flexibility to be and live the life that you have is something I've never experienced. And that's really supportive of all people from all backgrounds, right? Like if I'm taking care of parents at home, it's the same thing. So.
Thank you for sharing that, Randy. How about you, Marcos?
Yeah, similar to Randy, I love hearing what other folks at Zapier say. I would say for me, what immediately comes to mind is I'm a human first here at Zapier, and I'm a Zappian second. And there are so many things that make me me. I'm Mexican American, I'm queer, I'm a dog owner, I'm an uncle, I'm a brother, and I can bring these different identities and things that make me into the workplace when I'm comfortable, when it's important, and when I feel that I can. I'm never asked to do that. It's not required of me. I'm in spaces where I can naturally and authentically be me. And what stands out to me is I think a lot of companies for which we hear about and we work for, they say, bring your best self to work, right? But I feel like here at Zapier, I'm really able to do that based on my incredible leader, based on the support that I receive, and the empathy that comes with the people that I work with. So I would say that's what stands out to me the most here at Zapier and what makes me proud to be a Zappian.
I love that. Thanks, Marcos. And Jocelyne, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, what Randy and Marcos mentioned are some of the reasons why I have stayed at Zapier for as long as I have. I have a 18-month-old, so it definitely resonates with me that I can go pick her up from daycare and take her to the park and go hang out, and get back on later. So having that flexibility as a parent was really important for me. I think the other thing is just some of like the people practices that we have. So for example, like personal growth plans, and check-ins, and there's a lot of focus that our L&D team has done on career development and growth, which I don't see as much of a focus on at other companies. And for me, that's really critical, especially for folks who might come from underrepresented groups who might need that additional support and to get them where they need to go. And so growing up in my career, I was lucky enough to have allies, but I didn't always have the tools and resources available at my disposal to also help myself get there. And so I really appreciate that those tools and resources are in place. And just, gonna put a plug in for the number. If you go look out at our employee page, there's a lot of perks and programs and things that Zapier does to create spaces that our folks, are engaged in, feel included in, and that they can live their lives in. And so I'm just really, truly proud of the experience that Zapier creates for its employees.
Truly awesome, friends. Okay, so in these last 2 minutes, Power2Fly is going to drop in some awesome links for you to link up with our friends here at Zapier. Check out the page, check out all the resources. We're going to get roll with this team for a minute. Real. How would you describe the culture in one word? Jocelyne said caring. I heard a lot of that today. Absolutely. Caring, empathy. It's just so beautiful. What's your favorite part about working at Zapier? Marco said remote work flexibility. Yes, we just heard this, you got an 18-month-old, you're taking care of your parents, your kids, your dogs, whatever. It's like Zapier is there to help you sort it out. We're people first, as Marco said, which I love. And what are your top tips for someone who is interviewing? Randy, you said do your research on the company and role and work on your storytelling for connecting your experiences and your skills to that role. I think that's incredibly valuable. We have all these transferable skills. I mean, Randy, you're a great example of that, right? You came from one field, you're here and you're thriving, and it's beautiful. So friends, that's it. That was an hour. This was amazing. Let's give a digital round of applause to our Zapperonis, our Zappians, our Zaptastic panel. So great, y'all. You were so fantastic. I hope we get to do this again. Thank you so much. Is there anything else in this last moment that you'd like to share? Because it was just really beautiful.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
That'll do, Marcos. That'll do. Okay, thank you for being here. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And thank you to the participants for your amazing, open, engaging questions with such an open heart. And we hope to see you back here. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care now.